team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce, and I'm not on my own today, as I so often am these days. I've finally got round to having a chat with Steven Bendal, who I've spoken to a number of times previously. He's a great supporter of the channel, great supporter of Ukraine, and we'll understand why soon as he reintroduce himself to the audience. But I meant to do a live stream with him while he's in Kyiv, but yet again, that didn't quite happen. Probably myself being a bit useless and forgetful. But he's back in Norway at the moment, having just visited Ukraine. So I thought it'd be nice to have a chat with Steven to get a sense of what he experienced in Ukraine, but also what Ukrainians are thinking and feeling at the moment from his perceptions. And then we'll talk about Norway in general and how they are assisting Ukraine at the moment. So, Steven, that's my ramble. Thank you very much for agreeing to come back on. Reintroduce yourself to the audience for those who don't know you.
Yeah, I'm Steven Bendal. I'm average Norwegian who lives here in Ålesund in Norway. Married to a Ukrainian, so we tend to go to Ukraine every once in a while, at least once per year or sometimes a bit more. So yeah, that's pretty much. I'm sitting in my office now after work day has ended. So
time to have a chat about Ukraine, and you've just been over to Kyiv. Do you still have a place there, don't you, in Kyiv? Is that right?
Yes, we have an apartment, or if it was here, we would call it a hybel. It's it's slightly larger than a shoebox.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And you've just been back over there. So what was the time of year? What was it? November that you were back over there?
We went in September and returned in October. So now it's almost 2 months.
Oh my goodness me! How time flies.
15th of October we returned. So it was a 3-week stay in Ukraine. So,
well, I mean, obviously now it's Christmas time in Ukraine. And look, I can give a Ukrainian Christmas background. It's a bit too busy, so I won't do that, as we want to focus on what you have to say. But yeah, so you're over there in the autumn time. You obviously, as you say, you've been there a number of times, even over the course of the war. What did you notice the last time you were there, just generally in terms of, I guess, infrastructure, experience of the strikes at night, people's morale, the sense that you were getting from talking to people? Speak to me about any changes that you noticed.
Every time we arrive now after the war started, we see some more buildings destroyed, and there are always something added. There's always things that is repaired and rebuilt since last time and so on. So it is changing. The main difference, I think, this time was that we were there last year, and that was in around the same time of year, actually, early October. And this time, I felt that people were more like relaxed, more, I would almost say, more cheerful in a way. They were more. You see it when people walk in the street. You know how they are not dragging the feet. They are more like light, and when talk to people, they sound more optimistic in a way. So I think when they entered into last winter, people were more down. And now they feel more prepared. And I think they are better prepared also. Yeah.
But I wonder whether it could, because now you say that you left in October, and actually November was a hellish month, wasn't it, for strikes on the energy infrastructure out there. I wonder, I don't know that you can answer this, but I wonder whether they would be as upbeat now as they were. I mean, that's really positive that you felt that.
Yeah. No, I can't say how it would be now, of course. It would be interesting to be there then and see, but I wasn't so. But the people we talk to seem to get by okay. And as I said, I think they are better prepared, and they're getting sort of used to it, because it's been like this every winter. It's worse. Yes, it's worse now than it was, and it will only get worse winter by winter. But at the same time, people also getting used to this. They have their power banks. Some people buy these larger power banks, which can power more stuff in the apartment. They have this scheduled blackouts. They have the things they need at home. Everyone has their conserved food, water, batteries, candles. So it's more like they are ready to just hold out. And I think also because one thing is what they see and feel around themselves. They also see the news, and they see how things are going in Russia. They see how Ukraine is striking Russian infrastructure more and more. And so I think
I wonder how how the news portrays things out there. You probably got a better sense than I have. I never watched any TV when I've been to Ukraine, but I was thinking the other day how the strike on the submarine in Novorossiysk, right? I'm not sure I've seen that in the mainstream media. I was expecting that to be on the news. I mean, that's a military first, right? Where you've got an underwater drone being used for the first time in that kind of way, with that kind of precision, although it kind of just hit the end of the submarine, but by all accounts, it's done some pretty big damage. And there's even more evidence since I did my video this morning of that. But I didn't really see that on the mainstream media. And I would imagine in Ukraine, there would have been like shouting about that from the rafters.
Yeah, and they do. So in the Ukrainian news broadcasts, there are a lot of this. And they show these things, and they show all these different strikes. And you see a lot of many of these videos you are showing, and videos you see in the different channels on YouTube. They just go on the TV in Ukraine. They are not shy about it, It's like, oh, it's burning here and it's exploding there and so on. And there's a lot of it. And they have all these very good commentators and analytics and so on, who is going through this and explaining and like how this is inflicting Russia, how they are losing money, they are losing infrastructure and possibilities and so on and so on. So, and this is very important for morale. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because, of course, the news in the UK is generally going to be about telling the audience what's happened over the last 24 hours. There will be biases on there, but we don't have to think about providing morale for a downbeat population, and that's probably an aspect to television in Ukraine, where it has to provide that extra public service of like, well, we got to G up. I imagine it would have been the same in World War II in the UK with these Pathé news cinema things, which was as much about reporting what's going on as making people feel good. So
yes, it does.
Also, I was going to ask, it's just gone out of my head. Damn it, I've forgotten. I've interrupted myself there. Oh, yeah. So AJ Simon was asking, I wonder whether the main cause for this uptake in positivity, as you were saying, is it just people getting used to things? That's kind of what you were hinting at. Or do you think that they get a sense that actually things are just around the corner that could be really positive for Ukraine, a sense of that we got new weapons coming on, or how much are people staying in touch with that kind of news?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, because of course they are getting used to, and so when you get used to a situation, it's easier to endure that situation. It's also being better prepared, because they have learned little by little over these winters now what they really need, what you really need to have handy, and everyone has these things they need to have handy. Everyone has their escape bag ready packed by the door. If you have to run to the shelter, you grab this bag, because these things you do need: documents, papers, your medicines, your power bank. There is like a list of, I made a list for, I had a presentation in a NATO conference here in Ålesund, and just to remember, passport and legitimation, important documents, yes, and of course a change of underwear, hygiene articles, medicines, any medicines you need for a few days, because you don't know, and even when the alarm is over and you return to your apartment, if your apartment was struck, where is the rest of your medicine? So have enough medicine in your bag so you can handle it until you can get to a pharmacy if needed.
Yeah, that you reminded me of what I was going to ask. It's all come back now. I just watched a video from Anton Gerashenko where he's spliced together a load of different videos of people in Odessa, and Odessa at the moment is in an awful lot of trouble with regard to energy, right? So they appear not to have any energy, or they're really struggling, and so people are they, as you say, they're adapting and getting used to it. So they're hanging like net bags out of their windows in the cold air to act as a refrigerator, right, for their food, you know, hooked around the window handle and then outside. So they have to open the window, get their butter in or whatever, and they're reacting, you know, everything's power banks and then cooking outside together. And there is this, I mean, this happened at the beginning of the war where it brought communities together to you know, look after each other. I don't know if you saw much of that in Kyiv at all, because Kyiv is you know, one of the safer places now in terms of, or at least central Kyiv in terms of air defenses. What was your experience of air raids when you were out there?
Oh, it's air raids are all the time, you know. So yeah, I've experienced many of those. We were in a large shopping mall one day. It's actually two shopping malls. It's a Lavina and an Epicenter that is sort of built together.
Yeah.
So it's very large. And we were in there, and then the alarm came. And people started to walk out, and all these sliding doors, you know, in front of the shops, they were going down, and everyone was told to go out. I was sitting up in the first floor. There is an area with some restaurants and so on. So I had just bought a beer, and I was just sitting there and relaxing. And the waiter came and said, "Oh, you have to pay now." And I said, "Okay, no problem, I'll pay." And he just dragged down this screen, you know, in front of the bar, and he went. And I said to him as he was going, "What about me? What I have to do?" I mean, "You can drink your beer if you like." So, okay, I was sitting there drinking my beer, and after 10 minutes, there was a guard, some sort of, you know, these security guards. He was walking around in the center, and then he saw me, and he said, "Hey, you have to go outside." And I said, "Yeah, okay, and just this much beer left now, so okay." And then I went out, or I started to sort of go out, and then the alarm over signal came, and it was 5 minutes, and all these slides went up again. People came in. 10 minutes later, you wouldn't know anything had happened. And they said, "This is normal."
Yeah, I was just going to say, and yeah, of course, they're getting used to that. Interesting. In fact, so a couple of things. First of all, Viggo Holmsen, who's a fellow Nordic, they're saying everyone in the Nordics has a preparedness necessities list, a week's supply of everything you need in case of disaster. So that's interesting. That's obviously much of a Nordic thing. He said, "By the way, Stephen, we can all hear your Ålesund accented English." So he obviously knows his accents there, being a fellow countryman. Mark Bisque, who's over in Canada as a as a Ukrainian with Olena. A small sample to be sure, but the people we know in Kyiv and Odessa all agree Russian attacks on energy only make the desire to endure until victory stronger. The greater the hardship, the greater the will to persist. That's really, really interesting that he's come to that same kind of conclusion perhaps as you were as well. So you were a bit more positive about where Ukrainians were when you were there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I agree fully that the more they do, the more people will resist. You can't bomb a population into submission. You saw the same thing in the Second World War, in the London Blitz and so on. People don't give up when their city is bombed.
Yeah, I guess the way they give up though in Ukraine would be to get to a point where they would accept things like the Donbass being given away. Do you know? It's not like, so if you're in Kyiv, it's not like we're going to give up and Russia then suddenly owns all of Ukraine. But it's like somewhere over in the other part of the country, I can accept that being given away because I'm fed up of this consistent bombardment. Maybe, I don't know. I assume that could be the kind of difference.
Yeah, I would say from people we talk to and so on, and what I hear in general, because of hardships, I think people are willing to freeze the front line where it is and accept that this area is de facto occupied by Russia.
Yeah.
But I don't think people are willing to give this the euro away. That is out of the question. And all this talk about giving some more of Donbass that hasn't been occupied so far, no, people are not going for that. Absolutely not.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and that seems to be the general sense I get, and rightly so, because when you've fought the Russians for 4 years and they haven't taken that beautiful mug, by the way, beautiful mug. I've just drunk from mine, but it's in the kitchen. That's a quality ATPGEO Politics NAFO mug. Love it. But yeah, so it's like, why would you give up land that they've failed to take, and you're rewarding essentially Russian failure there, which seems remarkable to me. So did you speak to many Ukrainians? Were they surprised to see you there? Or were you just mainly speaking to people you knew?
I speak mainly to people I know, but I speak to people when it feels like okay to speak to people. And well, first, when we came this time, we went the northern route. We came through Warsaw in Poland and Helm, it's called, I think, this station.
Yeah, station the other side of the Polish border. Yeah.
That is a better way to go in, I think, because the train is waiting there. So you just go directly from the Polish train into the Ukrainian train. In the Spermicil, you have to stand outside and wait for 2-3 hours, and it's horrible. So that's better. When we got on this train and they drove over the border, and then the train stops, and the Ukrainian security, border security forces, they come on board and they go through the whole train. They take all the passports and everything, and they come back after a while. They go checking everything on computer and so on, and stamp the passports and everything. And then they come back, and there is 4 people in each of these sleeper compartments in the train. So they have the passports piled up very nicely, so it's 4 and 4, so they know where they are going, and they come to this sleeper compartment, and they put in the passport. It's like, oh, it's yours, and he took mine and he said, "Steven, welcome back." And
oh, nice.
Said, what? Why you welcome you? What about me? What about, she was like that. And I don't know. I have a bunch of Ukrainian stampings in my passport. Maybe they just think that I don't know.
Yeah.
Agreeable.
Well, when I've spoken to people, that it seems to be this. There's still a surprise that people would be coming from abroad to be concerned about Ukraine. Still, 4 years in, and that's good. I think it's very humble of Ukrainians to be very warmly welcoming of people who go out their way to help Ukraine. Obviously, you're married to a Ukrainian, so it's a slightly different context for you. But still choosing to go back to Ukraine at challenging times, I think it's really important and is a nice message to the Ukrainians who are living there.
Yeah, they really enjoy to receive foreigners, and I see it when we go to restaurants and cafes and so on. Maybe we came to one place and it was quite busy, and they were like, "No, we don't think there's no tables. No, we are too many people here now." And I was like walking around, and my wife says, "You look like a foreigner when you are here. You just, everyone can see you are a foreigner." And I said, "But I look like you people. What's the difference?" "No, it's because you're smiling and the way you look around and everything." And then this waiter looked at me and asked, "Is he with you?" And she said, yeah, he's my husband. We are together." And then was, "Oh, we have table, you see. Oh, come here,"
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, getting a bit of foreigner privilege there.
Yeah.
Nice one. Yeah. So what other sort of experiences of note did you have? Like you noticed that some of the buildings were a little bit worse for wear as a result of the strikes. Is there anything else you picked up from speaking to people or from observations generally?
It's not mainly, the everyday life is just going on. It's almost a bit weird because you go into the streets in Kiev and it looks like everything is normal. The shops are open, restaurants are open, everything is, and people are walking around, they're doing their daily business, and sometimes the alarm goes off in the day. It's mainly in the night, it's mainly in the evening the alarm starts and through the night. But sometimes in daytime, and people just calmly, they just go about, it's just like we are used to this. And we just, okay, then we walk home, or
Yeah, it's strange. Like Kiev is like that, particularly because I guess it's somewhat safer than many other cities due to its air defenses that are there. That's not to say some of the suburbs further out are not pretty dicey, but certainly if you stay in the center, I always felt pretty safe the twice I'd been there, and just going, walking around the city, or in my case hobbling around the city, and then doing almost touristy things. It felt, I mean, it's a beautiful city, Kyiv, but it is this weird tense situation. And then you can forgive, I guess, Ukrainians who live in Kyiv the whole time, thinking that the war doesn't affect them so much. It's a kind of something that's happening over there. But then if you go over there in the east of Ukraine, it's a whole different world. And I think that's a problem people like Donald Trump have had, which is to think that the war is something that affects the whole of Ukraine geographically the same, and that everywhere is rubberized and covered in destroyed buildings, and actually that's not at all the case. But yeah, so yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, but I think you are right. Of course, our apartment is on the western outskirts of Kiev, so we are far from Centrum, but on the west side. I think it's worse on the east side, as after what I have heard. On the east side of the river, the Dnipro goes straight through, and on the east side there has been more strikes, but there has been some in Centrum also. We see some buildings there, and around our part, of course, we have an airport quite close to us. It's not open, of course, but it's one of these airports that something is happening there, and they bombed there and so on. So
yeah, because I remember you contacting me once saying, "Oh, I think I'm just waiting to see if my apartment's been hit." I think there was a time when you were like worried because a strike had taken place pretty close.
yeah, it was pretty close. So And this is it's 1 kilometer from our apartment to one of these old airports that was used by Antonov, I think, and there is something else there now, and I've seen some things in the area, but I'll talk about that when the war is over.
Right. Yeah.
But things fall down there. We were walking down the street in the other direction from our apartment, and then I saw a hole in the roof. And immediately when I saw this hole in the roof, I thought, engine? You know, it like the shape and the size of this hole. I was thinking, could it have been an engine? And really, it looked like shape-wise, like I saw it in the museum later. Something. If you show this picture I have up there, it looked like something like this was going through there.
Interesting. So that is an engine from a Shahed type drone,
This is
or
a
a larger
Shahed
strike
type.
drone.
Yeah, and they pick up these all the time, you know, because this thing just falls. When you blow up the Shahed up in the air, this falls down. And it is, I don't know, I haven't tried to lift it, but maybe it's like 30 kilos, 25 kilos, 30 kilos, I'm not sure. But when this falls from 200-300 meters up in the air and this goes, this is a air-cooled flat 4, like a boxer engine, 4 cylinder. And from the size, I would say each cylinder could be maybe 50 cubic centimeters, maybe. So all in all, this engine would be around 200 cubic centimeters, I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, and this is why I keep saying, you know, what goes up must come down. It's great to see all these interceptions. Of course, 100% interception rate is what you want, but really, that's still going to cause damage on the ground, especially if you're intercepting them over urban areas. And so, ideally, you want to shoot them, you want to blow them up before they get made, really. Take out the factories. Like I keep talking about the process. You can take out the explosives factory so they can't put a warhead on them. You can take out the microelectrics components. You can take out the engine factory, right? Or then you take out the assembly factory, then you take out the depot, and then you take out the launch site, and then eventually you're going to have to take them out as they're flying. And when you take them out when they're flying, you really want to make sure you do that over farmland, essentially, or the Black Sea, and then that will cause the least harm to humans.
Of course.
Yeah, but just sad news as well. Just reading as we're coming online, Stephen, that the Ukrainians have lost a Mi-24 helicopter and all its crew. I don't know if that's it says killed while repelling a Russian attack. I don't know if that's it took out a Shahed, that kind of repelling an attack, but or whether it was near the front line. So that's going to be sad news, or that is sad news. I'll talk about that tomorrow morning. But did you see any helicopters at all in the skies, because they have become quite a major source of interception for these Shaheds?
Yeah, I would think that the helicopters will sort of circle around the city, not fly straight over.
100%.
But I don't know. But I'm just thinking, you know, if something happens like this, if the drone hits the helicopter falling down through roofs will be much worse than this little engine. So I think they're more circling around. So, but we hear the anti-air guns. Somewhere close to where we live, there is something, because when the alarm goes at night, if I look out the window, you can see these, like on the old war movies, you know, these tracers going up into the sky, and sometimes there are some explosions up in the sky and so on. And actually, this time, first time, I saw that or heard that when we were down in this small village in Vinnitsa, where my mother-in-law lives. And this is just a small rural area, a small town with maybe 8,000 or something like that population. And at night we heard this, and I saw it in daytime. It was like a flatbed pickup car, and it had this machine gun mounted on the back. And we heard it at night. It was going ta 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 ta, and then.
Really? So that's one of those mobile fire teams, obviously active. Was it kind of an SUV, a general SUV, or was it a military truck?
No, it looked like any Toyota flatbed pickup or Isuzu or whatever they are called. Like anyone would drive.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so they've obviously got a lot of them. They're pretty useful. A low tech solution to shooting down fairly low tech drones that can still cause one hell of a problem. You took some pictures of the museum that you went to. Have they already got a museum to the war then?
Yeah, they do have museum to the war. They have museums in Ukraine is very good. They have lots of museums, and they're very good museums. And they have museums for most things. And I'm very interested in history. So I go through all these historical museums, and it's everything about the founding of Kyiv and the Viking Age and the medieval times and all these things. And Second World War museums, there are several very good ones. And now also, of course, they started to have this current war. So, and I found a new one I haven't been to before. It's just over the road from the Mariinsky Park in centrum of Kyiv. So I was there, and if you show these pictures again, you can see some of these drones. This is when we come in the entrance there. Then there are some of the smaller drones hanging in a mountain there. Quadcopter and with dropping bomb thing and these FPVs.
Yeah. We just heard good news. I think they're talking about it in the live chat. Actually, the British are just getting some ultra drones, I think, which can carry 150 kilograms of weight for 1,000 kilometers or something like that. So that's going to be good news. But anyway, I digress. So that's a fairly sizable drone, that one, isn't it? And that's one of these Baba Yagas. But is it interesting? Or maybe this was damaged or something. But I would have thought, God, you've got that in a museum. You should be using that on the front line. So I wonder what's going on there then.
No, I think they send in or take into museum things that are damaged or things that are something with if it was fully usable, it would be used at the front, I'm sure. And you see like the stand or the what you call it rack under there, it seems a little bit bent on one place, and when I was looking at some of them have some cords hanging out here and there, and so maybe it has crashed into a tree or something and someone picked it up, and I don't know. So but it's to show the scale. This one is big and it has these 4 big bombs on that, and there is one of these Bayraktars.
So that's not a Bayraktar. That looks like a Lyuti to me. That looks like the Lyuti drone.
I think it says Bayraktar.
Is it actually Bayraktar?
TB2.
So that is a TB2. Oh, right. That's interesting. Mind you, I need to expand the size of this because I'm looking at a slightly different window. So the Bayraktar's got that upside down. It's been so long since I've seen Bayraktars, to be honest. So these were obviously so important at the beginning of the war, slightly over-egged in terms of the impact they had, or at least the way they used them, because the Ukrainians were very clever. They used these to kind of bomb the convoys at the beginning of the war, and they took a load of footage, but they didn't release it all at once. They released it over quite a long period of time to make it look like they were still using them, but actually the Russians got used them quite quickly and were able to adapt to them, and they had to pull them back and start using them more for reconnaissance. But they kept releasing footage, and they became this cult thing, didn't they? The TB2, and you had songs made about them. They're brilliant.
It's very, very good. There are a bunch of different smaller drones around this one. I took a bunch of pictures when I was walking around, but I won't pester people by showing them 650 photos from my trip.
Your holiday
pics. Try to be
yeah.
polite when one is online. So just a few. This from the other side. I was trying to show the size of.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was because there are some of these smaller drone types standing around it. So. This is a museum, and it's a war, and it's the whole war. So you see here, this starts 2014, and this is from this airport in Donetsk, fought over in January 2015, and it's the Ukrainian.
Is that the airport just south of Avdiivka?
It's the airport just out of Donetsk.
Yeah, it was like the front line, even at the beginning of this war, and then the Russians were just north of there, and that was where it was stuck for ages until they started using aviation, and then Avdiivka fell. But this has just been bombed recently because they've been using that as a launch site for Shaheds and drones.
Yeah. This has been bombed again several times, but this is showing the Ukrainian soldiers who died there in 2015, when they were defending it back then, January 2015, and they made a scale model of it, and they are clever with these models, the Ukrainians. Here I take picture from the side. And it's very, all the details and everything is very nice, and the building, it's just like you see it on the picture from the same. So this is how it looked January 19th in 2015.
And I think that features, there was a documentary of is it called the 93rd? I think the 93rd Brigade had some documentaries made of them, and it starts off with them. I think it goes from then in 2014 onwards, and then at the beginning of the war. I remember just probably 3 years ago, during this war, they brought out some sizable videos, and they showed the battles that they were having over. I'm sure it was a 93rd over this airport.
Yeah, it's a long war. We often forget, but the Ukrainians don't forget that it is a long war. This is when you come in the door of the museum, and there is this broad stairway going up to the first floor, and you have this map, and with the badges from all the different regiments, and put where they sort of belong on the map. So here you can find all these patches.
I love a good patch. Love a good patch. I've just looked on YouTube as you're speaking there, and you can find it 93rd, the Battle for Ukraine. It's I think a 3-part documentary. It's 4 years old now, so it's right at the beginning of the war, and yeah, that talks about 93rd anyway. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Indeed. Just a picture of me and my wife outside one of the many churches in Kyiv. And we were walking around. I think she's watching me at home now, so maybe I wouldn't get yelled at when I come home.
They love a good church, especially with the golden top as well. But, yeah.
This is in the Mariinsky Park. This is how far you can go now. You see, the Mariinsky Palace is behind there. This is where the foreign dignitaries are welcomed. And straight through the park, this barbed wire goes straight through, and you can walk to there, but no longer. So
no further. Yeah,
that is because there are a part of in centrum of Kyiv. There is a part of town that is just shut down, and there are guards around, and so.
Yeah, I've both times. That's the old chap that was Slavo-Ukrainian and was shot.
Yeah.
So sad. Yeah, we were staying in the Ukrainska Hotel, which is a famous hotel right in the middle of Kyiv. It's an old Soviet era hotel. I mean, it's just quite old school rooms. You wouldn't probably. We chose to stay there as a kind of like to say that we'd been there as this iconic place to be. But really nearby, I think there are government buildings and several times where they like closed the road down. So obviously receiving some foreign dignitary in, as they often do in Kyiv these days, and driving around, and so you quite often see that.
I've stayed in that hotel also, and I did it just to, as you say, to say that I've been there.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it's kept like you see the Soviet style. I think it was built in 1960 or thereabout. So it was like in the middle of the Soviet Union. So but it was interesting, absolutely. And these governmental buildings are behind there, and the president's residence and stuff just in the street behind this hotel.
Yeah.
So this was in another museum. We went and we were not allowed to take photos there for some odd reason. You can find lots of pictures from that museum on the internet, but we were not allowed to take any pictures. So I saw some signs and I wasn't sure what they said. So I went over and took a picture of this one before I asked what these signs mean. And then I was told no pictures.
Right, fair enough.
So that's the picture I have. Oh, and this is inside this first. You see again this wall behind there. They are just showing these the uniform and equipment and stuff. And so there is a lot of things when you walk around here. They show all the different things they have, the different things they use, the different things received from abroad. There is a wall full of all these javelins and these shoulder-held rocket, different types. Lots of. So for those who are interested in museums and history and military history and things like that, a trip to Kyiv is absolutely a must. There is so many fabulous museums.
It makes you wonder as well what people are going to find when they after the war, and how much equipment people are going to have, like javelins in the backyard. You remember that story of the guy that had a tank that I think it was up in Kharkiv region where where the Russians had got really close and then they'd retreated, and he had basically picked up a T-72 or something, was hiding it in his barn, and then the authorities found out. They're like, no, you can't have that, mate, you can't have that. But yeah,
this is a T-34, so this is an old. These monuments, this is like Second World War monuments, and
you see those every other settlement in Ukraine has those or similar ones. Maybe,
but this one has been repainted. I was in this area before the war also, and then it was very original, like Second World War. But now I notice what's strange with this. Okay, they have painted on it this pixel.
The camo, the pixelated camouflage, yeah,
and the Ukrainian crest symbol and the Ukrainian flag is there and everything. So now this old Soviet tank is very Ukrainian.
I think they're moving on for the pixelated camouflage. I'm fairly sure that they've got a new one coming on, but yeah, it's a shame. It's so iconic. But yeah, so at the moment, Norway is being incredibly supportive of Ukraine, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to show people a few bits of news coming from the recent Ramstein. I'm going to do a military aid update probably tomorrow, live update tomorrow. Got a fair bit to say. But Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre says today I can announce that Norway will finance a new package worth 3.2 billion kroner. I'm not quite sure how much that is. The package consists of weapons and ammunitions for F-16, as well as air defense missiles, purchasing parts of this equipment from the US as part of the Pearl initiative. And then, sorry, I'm not even showing the right one. So let's get rid of your tank and add this one. So yeah, 3.2 billion krona. That's sounds pretty decent. Ukraine to get more S-300 interceptors with Norway's help. And this is quite interesting. Norway says it will pay for the badly needed missiles for Ukraine's S-300. So these are old Soviet era air defense systems, but there are questions about where they'll come from. It's like, keep that on the quiet, but I'm fascinated to see where they get them from. I don't know, Syria, would they have any? Maybe Turkey, they've been that, you know, they're going to give back their S-400s. Anyway, I wonder. And then we hear that Kongsberg, a big Norwegian defense giant, really, has acquired the US-based Zone 5. So their flagship product, Zone 5, is the Rusty Dagger, which is one of 2 missiles that was selected for the Extended Range Attack Munition Program to provide low-cost cruise missiles for Ukraine. So Kongsberg could be coming up maybe at some point with cheaper cruise missiles for Ukraine. So Norway very much involved with supporting Ukraine, really staunch support still. Is that something that that you recognize is still the case in the Norwegian public in general?
Yeah, there is a huge majority of Norwegians are supporting Ukraine, absolutely. And I see it when I read the newspapers. I see the commentaries, and you know, people are writing in, and most people support Ukraine. And then there are some who don't, of course. And you know, you were talking earlier about this. In Norway, they started this this political party that should hope to get represented, and they would sort of get us to stop aiding Ukraine. They were called FOR. We just call them Friends of Russia. And they got, I think it was like 0.3% or something in the election, and so they are not represented at all, of course. So it just flopped.
Yeah, good.
There isn't. Norwegians don't want this kind of thing, you know. We've had parties like that before in the Second World War, and it's not popular.
Yeah, and you know, still some of the strongest support for Ukraine is coming from the Nordic states, from Scandinavia at large. Obviously, with their own history involving Russia, you don't want to get, you know, once bitten, twice shy. And the same can be said for Poland. It's interesting how Hungary is a bit weird, but then I think that's more coming from the top in Hungary, not necessarily from the people across the board in Hungary. And hopefully that's represented by the Peter Magyar's party, the opposition party to Fidesz and Viktor Orban, now having something like an 18-point advantage in the last poll over Viktor Orban. So that's good news for Ukraine. But then it all comes down to really Donald Trump in the United States, arguably at the moment, in terms of, you know, where it all goes. My position, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, Stephen. My position, well, no, one of my theories has been that Zelensky is open to concede loads of things, like, you know, the size of the army, like maybe de facto recognition of control or something like that. He's happy to make these concessions, which you think, oh, really? You're doing that? But possibly because he knows that Russia are going to just say no matter what he says. And therefore the onus, because it shifts from Ukraine, where the US has put the onus on Ukraine, back to Russia, because then Russia looks like the ones that are being stubborn and difficult. So he's maybe conceding things that he actually recognizes will never get conceded anyway, because Russia are just not going to sign up to it. So that's one theory. I'm not sure whether that's definitely the case, or whether he's like super serious about conceding and actually doing peace. What are your thoughts?
I agree with what you said there. This has been my thought throughout this process, because I think Zelensky knows very well that he can't get the majority of the Ukrainians to go along with any giving away of territory or anything like that. It's not possible. What you could get the majority of Ukrainian population to agree to now, I think, is freeze the front line, but don't give anything away de facto. Nothing will be written. You know, it's still Ukraine. but it's occupied. We can live with that because in the future we will get it back. I think that is possible. But you are not going to get a majority of Ukrainians to agree to the euro give away any land at all, because they do expect to get it back. Ukraine has been occupied before. Ukraine has a long history, and they have been occupied, and they have been attacked, and they have been held down and everything. But they get their land back. And I think that is what they expect now also. They will get this back. So I'm sure when Zelensky says yes to these things, it's because the Russians will say no. And if the Russians by some chance should say yes, then Zelensky can say, okay, it's against the law, and we have to put this through parliament. We have to have a referendum, and then the population will say no, and then they would say, oh, sorry, can't do it anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I think Zelensky could be playing quite a clever one there. I mean, to me, it's all about trying to communicate to Trump that Putin is a bad guy and that Putin is not playing along. And as soon as Trump, I think because he likes to kind of back winners, but also just he doesn't like to be embarrassed in public, I think. And if he just recognizes that Putin is taking the piss out of him, then he's more likely to just go, all right, Ross, screw you then. And then it just comes down to whether they truly have compromise on Trump, whether they truly do have any, because then he can be held back from doing the right thing for reasons that aren't like your normal calculations. This is very different then. And it just, and then it doesn't matter what anyone does, he'll always back Russia because there's compromise. So what's your thoughts? Do you, I know it's hard to know, and there's a lot of speculation.
It is hard to know, and it will only be speculation, but I find it hard to see what kind of compromise could they have that would really stick. You know how Trump is, what can they put out there, and he won't just say it's fake, it's not true, it's not me, it's not. Or if they have pictures of him from the 90s with some girls, he will just say, oh, look at me, I was quite a stud back then, you see, oh, great guy. I think it will just, it won't stick on him, So, but of course, they could have something. I can't even imagine,
Well, here's something like Darren. I've not thought about this. Darren Corrigan, thanks, mate. Darren's a great supporter of the channel. Darren, and I don't know if he means in the context of our conversation, I assume he does. This is quite clever. Like, if Putin has been involved in interfering in American elections, then he's obviously got all the evidence. Like Prigozhin has previously said, before Prigozhin died, he said, we interfered with the American elections. Like, it was really, I forget what the statement he said about it, but it was really something involving physiology or whatever. But he said, yeah, we 100% interfered in the American elections. Now, Trump's position is Russia hoax, Russia. It's a Russia hoax, right? But then if Putin comes out and says, if you don't support us, I will prove that we did interfere with the American election, and I will put out all the things that we did. I like that. That's quite clever. I don't know. I always think about like sexual stuff and all the Christopher Steele dossier and all that kind of compromise, but there could be other types of compromise too.
Yeah. It's true. That's why I say there could be something I don't even imagine, or I don't see how far that could reach, or if it's something he could still just say it's a hoax, even if the Russian says it, if he can, I don't know, and maybe he can't, and maybe this is the problem. I don't know.
Yeah. Democrat Bob here, that was all debunked. I mean, it wasn't debunked, and it wasn't. I don't know if you're being facetious, sarcastic here. Russia didn't rig the elections. It's not about rigging the elections so much as influencing the elections. So, but it's not conspiracy theory, because the Mueller report very clearly indicated that it did happen. The social media companies, Twitter, before it was it was Elon Musk, and Meta, Facebook, have admitted that it happens. The data is there. At least to a large degree. The question is, how big a scale was this? And it's very difficult to measure whether it had any discernible effect on the outcome of the election. But there was interference there. You only have to look at the social media companies and the output on social media platforms. Now, the Mueller inquiry very clearly stated this. If you go and read the Mueller report, it doesn't say what Trump says it says. Trump says it exonerates him and it's a Russia hoax, and then he got Bill Barr to come out and say stuff, but it's not what it says. It tried, well, people wanted it who were critical of Trump. It wanted the Mueller inquiry to prove there was collusion, but it didn't have the tools to prove collusion, because collusion is that Trump knowingly was getting Russia involved in the elections. But irrespective of what Trump wanted, Russia was involved in the elections. The data is out. It hasn't been debunked one iota. So that is just I'm afraid you're categorically incorrect. But again, I would go and look at the Mueller report itself. Anyway, sorry, just had to answer that. And by the way, Trump won in the 2016 election in free and fair election. I mean, I don't know if this is trollish behavior or someone that's just really committed to like Trump. You can argue it was a free and fair election to a degree, but there was unfair foreign malign influence, as there is in every election at the moment. The question is, what degree is that? And that's why we've just announced in the UK an investigation into foreign interference in our political system. We all know it's there. So it's just degrees. Like, you can say we've got free and fair elections, but to some degree they aren't free and fair. And in the US, you've got money thrown into that as well, where you've got stupendous amounts of money that you could argue makes the elections not free and fair, because they're screwing people's kind of knowledge base. There's persuasion going on, so on and so forth. So I think these are really problematic statements here, and it is not. Honestly, it's not conspiracy theory. You need to go and look into the details with a far more objective eye there. And again, please read the Mueller report. I would suggest you do that, and if in doubt, just get an AI synopsis of it. Anyway, we're digressing, Stephen. So what are your thoughts at the moment? I know we often talk about this just in general terms when we have a chat. Like, what are your thoughts on the war at the moment? Where do you think it is at the moment? What are you most hopeful about? What are you most worried about?
I'm most hopeful about the state of affairs in Russia. I think really now the economy is tanking. I think it's very hard for them to get people and equipment and everything to the front line. We see all these things all the time, the soldiers complaining about lacking everything, and the soldiers are getting older, and they don't look like very fit guys anymore. I think actually this is, I used to say this when this is discussed here in the lunch and so on. I say, Russia is running out of soldiers. And people say, no, they have millions of men, but not soldiers. They are running out of soldiers. They have men. They have 70-year alcoholics. They have poor guys from the Far East and so on. They can put a green jacket on any man you pick up, and you can give him an old AK-47, and you can send him into the front. He's not a soldier. He's just a piece of meat with a green jacket and an old rifle. That's what it is, They are running out of soldiers, because the soldiers, the well-trained, the fit 30-year-old guys with years of experience that really knows how to combat and how to work together as a large team to do these things, most of them are gone. Russia is running out of soldiers. They have men with green jackets, what they lack soldiers.
But this is one of my big worries for Ukraine, is that Russia also has the ability to, I mean, they've just started this campaign to attract people from Iran, and they're willing to go around the world and say, right, okay, we can't get soldiers, you know, decent soldiers from Russia, so we'll just pick them up from anywhere else we can by offering them, goodness, we could offer them far less than we offer Russian population in terms of a financial sweetener, you know, because you're attracting people from places that are far less well off than Russia. And so that's what I worry about, is that there's almost, you know, it's not infinite, but there's a reserve of Russian troops potentially that's as long as Russians' ability to pay for them. So then it comes down to payments.
Yeah, but again, this is just meat with a green jacket on, because how well will these guys function, even if you can get fit guys in the right age from Iran and Cuba and somewhere in Africa and so on. They speak different languages. They have never had any training together. They are basically just meat with a green jacket on. They also, lest they could actually get some real fighting units from, would Iran agree to send like a division of their this guard they have there, you know, these elite soldiers, something like that? I don't think that would come cheap, at least. And I don't see this happening either. You know, it's more like individuals picked up, and it's the same thing, maybe even worse, because they don't speak the language. You know, you saw the problems when the North Koreans came. They don't speak the language, how to communicate, how to cooperate with them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with North Korea, you can pay them in oil and gas, arguably, because they've got plenty of that. And if they're struggling to sell it on the international markets, then actually they need to keep it flowing. That's a resource that they can, you know, scare quotes, freely give to North Korea. But Iran has their own like oil reserves, so they don't necessarily need that kind of payment. But yeah, like that's what I'm worried about, just the ability for Russia to prolong this war by relying on outside assistance, and that goes to actually China and Iran again, and North Korea in material, not just people as well. But yeah, so Russia's economy is what's giving you the positives, the hope at the moment, is it?
Yeah, and all the strikes they receive, you know, the important factories are going down, their oil production is going down, refineries are burning, and the submarine hit now, you know, and things like that. They are losing planes all the time, you see, every week almost. Russia loses planes. And so I think it's going absolutely the wrong way for Russia. And that is good.
What do you think is the most challenging aspect then for what's the biggest worry for Ukraine?
Right now, I think it's the money. I think they need to be financed. Really, they need to be financed. They need to have enough money to scale up, because it is, I froze up. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I absolutely agree with you when you say that every of these new weapons is a game changer if you can get them to scale. And this is the thing now. If you could put in a few billions into the manufacturing and scale up all these new drones, new cruise missiles, new ballistic missiles, all this, get thousands. I would like to see 1,000 go into Russia every night.
Yeah,
every night.
I honestly, I go to bed dreaming of this. Like, literally, this is what I think about so often. And it's funny you should mention this, because bring this up here, because Zelensky's made that connection today. So this is what he's just said at Brussels. So he's gone to Brussels in order to try and secure this financing. He's met with Bart de Wever, the Belgian Prime Minister, and he's warned that without the new funding by spring, Ukraine will be forced to drastically cut drone production. It's not just about not being able to scale up, but it's actually cutting what they're presently producing, and will lose long-range strike capability. He also revealed that some air defense systems are already out of missiles. So there you go, and that's probably reference back to maybe the S-300s we just heard about with regard to Norway helping them out. So he's making that connection. Without that money, yeah, we can't function as a government, but we can't build bloody drones, and that's what this war is based on at the moment. So yeah,
I wish Norway would guarantee for this loan. Why we are keep on banging our head against the Belgian bank when Norway could just say, okay, we'll underwrite it. It's done. You know?
That would be such a ballsy thing to do. But yeah, I can't imagine that. Surely there's no legal basis. I mean, it's weird when you see the US at the moment, like go and like board a tanker in Venezuela. Like, say what you like about Trump, and I say an awful lot against him. Like, he's also just like, yeah, don't care. Do what I like. Like, I don't like Venezuela. We're going to board one of their vessels. Meanwhile, like, international courts are going, I'm pretty sure you can't do that. And he's like, give a damn. No, I don't care. So, and then you almost want like Europe, but then as soon as you enter down that route, then you are eschewing the rule of law. And that's what we want to be standing up for. And so
I don't know if Norway guarantees for a loan to Ukraine. Are we breaking any laws? We are.
Well, no, that's not. Yeah, but that's not breaking laws. So, but what I was talking about, I was just going off on one to do with the EU boarding ships that I think needs to have like Russian shadow tankers and whatnot. But going back to that, like I don't think Russia. Surely they can't legally challenge that money after. It's like a murderer going to Doris's house next door, murdering Doris, knocking over a vase and then cutting himself and suing that he's cut himself. And you're like, hang on, mate, you've just murdered Doris, dude. You get like, no, well, not having this at all. You've gone into her house and you've cut yourself. So, you know, there's that kind of, I don't know if that analogy works perfectly, but the idea that they can sue Europe for using those frozen Russian assets when, you know, we're using those frozen Russian assets precisely because you've done heinous like things and invading Ukraine. I'm fairly sure that if they could have sued, they would have already sued.
Well, I think you are right also in they would open all sorts of a kind of worms and all that, you know, because so many could sue Russia then for so many things. So I think that would be very hard for them. It's more like they are scaring us with they say we will do this and we will do that, and by the way, remember we have a bomb. And this is we shouldn't care, you know. We must stop care about these stupid threats. So just do it. But I think regardless, if Norway says give the loan, not the Russian money, but a loan to Ukraine, and if this loan cannot be repaid later, Norway will pay for it because we have so much money. Just the extra money we have earned since 2022 on the extra gas we have sold at a higher price than normal. Just that alone, I think it was like 1,004 or 1,500 billion Norwegian krone. That is 150 billion US dollars approximately. You know, so why? You know, for us, it's like when the slaughter gives away one sausage when he's in the midst of the big production, you know, before Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I'm contemplating just doing a fundraiser to fund you Stephen, to go to the Norwegian government and just pick it outside the parliament and try and convince them. I think that's as good a option as any. Yeah, you've sold me. Like, I agree with you. But then it's easy for me to agree that Norway has to underwrite it, not anyone else. But I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems sensible to me. Any lawsuit would have to be brought in Belgium. It wouldn't work, says Viggo. And yeah, I think that's a way that Russia's been able to scare people with kind of the legality of it, where I just think it's a bit of a non-starter. But you would have thought that if that's the case, and that advice would have been given to people like Bart de Wever to say, look, don't get worried about Russia doing this. They have no chance of being able to do that. But it doesn't seem to have got through. I do want to just share this because I know Democrat Bob, or whatever troll he is, has done a runner now. But I did want to just point out, here is an AI overview. Now, it is referenced, so it is referenced to, the Mueller report itself. So it is taking directly from the horse's mouth. The Mueller report stated that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 US presidential election in a, quote, sweeping and systematic fashion, but did not establish, the report did not establish members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated. And that's the point. It couldn't prove collusion, but it did very clearly spend a lot of time talking about how the Russian state did interfere with the election. The report detailed two main ways that they did: social media campaign and hacking and release of materials. So the Russian military intelligence hacked democratic organizations and released stolen documents through various channels, including WikiLeaks, to cause political damage. While the report found numerous links between Russian nationals and the Trump campaign associates, it did not find enough evidence for criminal conspiracy charges. And that's a problem. Finding conspiracy or collusion is different from saying that they interfered. So Democrat Bob just doesn't have a leg to stand on. And it also, when Paul Manafort was put in prison, although he's been pardoned by Donald Trump, but you've got lots of dots that are very easy to connect there. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted just to go off on one again. Just going to go through some super chats, Stephen, if I may. So thank you very much to Noel Grace for supporting the channel. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Noel. Thank you very much to Mark Biscu, as we've already been through his super chat, but he's such an amazing, or him and Olin are such amazing supporters of the channel. Kevin Force, thank you for ATP Geopolitics memberships, super kind, as well as is Zeb Carter, very, very consistent supporters of the channel. Now, Papa Dutch says, what breaks my cookies is the idea of truly high-powered drones, half-scale airplanes with no pilot and ducted turbofans. Yeah, I guess, drones are an issue. High-powered drones are an issue. Low-powered drones, low-tech, high-tech, medium-tech, just drones. The more, and especially if you can make absolutely tons of them. And the problem with the Shaheds is, yeah, Shaheds are kind of, I guess, okay. They do a pretty good job of doing what they're designed to do. But there's just so many of them that are getting made. That's the problem. So it goes back to scale is the issue here. Scale. And Papa Dutch also says, anyone who isn't exploring the new modalities in warfare will be left behind quickly. Science fiction just became yesterday again. Everyone in their right mind is going to be studying this war in Ukraine. And you're seeing already around Europe, armies and governments react and change their strategies and learn as much as they can from this war. And helping Ukraine is also helping ourselves. When Norway, or when the UK assists in Norway and the UK are the people who run the maritime coalition with Ukraine, right? Helping Ukraine in the context of the Black Sea and underwater drones and USVs and whatnot. But that is as much helping ourselves as it is helping Ukraine. There is no such thing as a free lunch, and we help them partly because it's the right thing to do, but it aids our security and it improves our own technology and R&D, and we're getting that feedback from all of these pieces of equipment. So yeah, Sorry, I'm going off on one now. Papa Dutch, do unto the other side of the historic border what Russia did to the Ukraine side, declare that a demilitarized zone. I don't understand why we're not presenting Russia with our own red lines. We always seem to be singing to we always seem to be dancing to Russia's tune at the moment. Do you have any thoughts on sort of red lines and how we should deal with Russia?
I wish then we should go back in time and start earlier, to just put down red lines. But of course, we could do it now and just say that enough is enough. The best thing, of course, would be if there were a sensible president in the United States, because if they just said that enough is enough, either you agree to a ceasefire immediately, I give you like 24 hours ceasefire. Otherwise, we just start giving Ukraine everything. We'll give them all sorts of the best long-range equipment, anything, and just bomb out, because if you only had like 50 Tomahawks or something and send them into Yalabuga and just take the whole plant out, everything, just demolish the whole thing, and other, I'm sure they have a long list of important factories and so on in Russia. If they just could send like 50 every night for a period and just say, okay, you agree to a ceasefire, or there will be another 50, another 50, another 50. I think in 1 week, 2 weeks, then Russia would just say, okay, ceasefire.
It's what people like, who was it? It was Metrawelli, the MI6 British military intelligence, foreign intelligence new chief, said the other day, as many others have said, Putin won't stop until he's forced to stop. And so you've got to force him. You can't just sweeten him with anything shy of his own maximalist objectives in terms of negotiations. He's not going to stop. You've got to force him to stop. And the only way you force him to stop is either, or a combination of both, either economically or militarily. Like that's it. One of those two things forces him to stop. Yeah, really frustrating.
We should use the possibilities we do have, and we can do a lot, like Shadow Fleet going through the Baltic Sea. This can actually be stopped legally, because the countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Germany, all these countries can just say, we will inspect these ships because they seem not to be safe. So each and every ship will be taken into port, and we have to go through everything, documentation. We have to go through and see that the ship is okay, and everything. And this will take weeks and weeks for each and every ship. And we are not doing anything illegal. We are not seizing the ship. We are not taking anything. We just have to make sure that this ship is safe. And if each and every ship going in and out there had to spend weeks waiting to finish an inspection, then this line of oil going out would be pretty much stopped.
And then the question is, well, why haven't they done that? Because that seems very sensible to me. But obviously,
they think that an old man in Russia has some sort of button in his suitcase. It's just silly. There's no reason. Just do it.
Do it. Well, I agree with you on that one. Just a few more super chats. I just want to go through. Sorry to take up the time with that. But Papa Dutch says, if elections are free and fair, a lot relies on the average intelligence of the general population. In the United States, stupid people are allowed to vote too. Ouch. I think that's a bit anti-American. The result equals the average intelligence of the nation. Well, it was Winston Churchill who said the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. I think a quote something like that, which is a pretty damning indictment of democracy, I guess. And he also said democracy is the least worst of all the political theories or mechanisms. So, but thank you, Papa Dutch. Really appreciate that. Final one from you as well. Trump's biggest misconceptions are that he doesn't own any property in Ukraine, and there's something in that actually. So, he's always wanted property in Moscow. He hasn't quite got round to building a Trump Tower in Moscow, but they're surely dangling that carrot over him. He is susceptible to those kind of bribes, and you can bet your bottom dollar that he's going to be benefiting from any future trade agreements with Russia very personally. I think Steve Witkoff has just gone back to the US with a whole crate of red caviar because he was at a restaurant in when he was over in Moscow recently and ate some red caviar and thought it was so wonderful that the Russians are giving him a crate to give to Trump. They're just sweetening the man. They just, it depresses me. Mitch Mazarol, thanks for your Canadian love there, mate. Ask the Baltic countries or Moldova if Russian influence campaigns make a difference. Whether or not the Russian effort in the US was substantive is not the point. The Russians would not do it if the results were non-existent. That's it. They wouldn't beat their heads against a brick wall unless they were getting some results. Do you see in Norway any evidence of Russian interference outside of that political party that you were talking about?
Yeah, there are lots of these bots, and I see it in this comment section in the newspaper where you can just write in online. There are people who are probably sitting in Russia and writing, and they use, sometimes the names they use are a bit strange and so on. So we have an idea about who it is, but also from what they are writing. Of course, some of them are Norwegians who are just down the rabbit hole, but I'm sure I don't follow all these different things, Instagram, and I don't know even what it's all called. I'm not great on all this social media stuff, but I'm sure there would be a lot also there. They are trying to influence all the time. It's only we are harder to influence like that. It's not that easy. And it's not because we are smarter or anything, but I think it's about our background, and we are more critical, sort of. I'm not sure, but so it's not that successful here. But it's here, and they try, and when they even like some high-ranking person seems to be paid in some way, to help influence us, writings in newspapers under known names and so on. We see things that are, they do try, but this is not the best way, the best place to do it. I think that it's probably much easier in America, and I think that is the thing there, that they influence through these social channels and so on. More than, it's not like election fraud is like stuffing the ballot box with fake ballots or anything like that. It's more like getting into people's minds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. That is forever. Well, not forever. Well, maybe, I don't know, with the prevalence of social media these days, it is just a threat to our, I think, democracies, to our societies in general, and not just from a political point of view or an international political point of view in terms of Russian influence in our lives and our political landscapes, but it's also just the way our lives are generally dictated by the algorithms of social media at the moment. Our children growing up who are growing up within this entire environment. I think we need to have some very frank conversations about, and Australia is trying to do this, and they're banning social media up to 16, but then you need to do more than just that. You need to provide freedom for them elsewhere in life to be able to thrive out, so on and so forth. So we're at a very important time in global history where technology has a grip over us, and I think we need to be very careful going forward as to how much control we allow other nations to have over us as they invade our heads, but also the tech companies themselves and the people that run those tech companies and our own governments and so on and so forth. These are certainly challenging times. Look, as we meander to the end, Steven, what are there any other thoughts, any other aspects of your relationship with Ukraine or your visits to Ukraine that you want to talk about that we haven't yet covered?
I could probably talk for hours, but I shan't do that. No, I love Ukraine. I fell in love with Ukraine first time I was there, and I really see that this is an amazing country, and I see the resilience of the people. I see how they are so clever to organize and find their ways around stuff and everything. They are like, I'm sure that Ukraine is winning this in the end. I'm just sure about it. When I've seen it from the inside, it's like, no, I'm just sure, and I can't point at any specific thing and say that this is why they're winning. This is how they're winning. I can just say that they are going to win this. And but it will be hard. It will absolutely be hard. And I'm looking forward to my next trip, which I think will be next year. And it's always nice. I don't know. It feels good. It's like relaxing. You know, people here always ask me, well, how dare you go there? And isn't it dangerous? And aren't you scared? But when I come to Ukraine, I just feel relaxed. I just feel that it's a nice place to be, even if the alarm is sounding, even if we have to leave the shops in the middle of the day or whatever. I just love being there.
I imagine it's a bit of everything, Ukraine. So on the one hand, you can go to places like Lviv and Kyiv and experience these really vibrant young cities in many degrees. Yeah, obviously very old and full of culture and history, but the young people there give it a vibrant, cutting edge feel where tech is embraced by Ukraine and it is used in a very, I think, positive manner. And yet there are also, villages and towns and places that are the opposite end of the spectrum there that'll be far more traditional, far more old school with a Soviet heritage. So it's got this melting pot of all sorts of different senses. And I've experienced more formally some of the larger vibrant cities, and I would also like to go to Ukraine when it's not winter time. That would be nice. But both the times I've been, it's been in the depths of winter, so I'd love to go in the summer and experience the warmth of Ukraine from a climate point of view, but also see some of these other places out off the beaten track and experience the whole range of what Ukraine has to offer. But anyway, yeah. It is. I've enjoyed Ukraine, even given the context of the war, both times I've been. So I'm with you on that. Well, look, Steven, people are saying thank you very much, and thank you to the mods and everyone who is out there. Great to have Steven here, and he's always in, of course, the live chats as well, very often. So it's always a pleasure to have him here, and of course, we'll have him back when there is more Norwegian or Ukrainian experience stuff to talk about. What are your final thoughts, Steven?
It's great to be here. I'm very pleased to be allowed to come to the channel and talk about this, because this is so close to my heart. It feels very important to me to be able to talk about Ukraine and get people to understand more about Ukraine and how also now in the wartime there is also normality. There are also it's also enjoyable and nice, and at the same time it's horrible and people are dying and it's all sorts, but it's life. So, and if the Ukrainians can endure this, then we who are outside we should not give up. We should not be the ones who stop or get tired or anything like that. We don't have the right to be tired, because we are not receiving all this hardship. We just have to give a little of our GDPs in each country, and then Ukraine will do the fighting for us, and Ukraine will win the war for us, and Ukraine will make Europe safe, and we should get Ukraine into NATO. That is very, very important. 100%. Ukraine needs to be part of NATO, because Europe will stand on its own two legs, no problem, with Ukraine inside NATO.
Total agreement from me. Well, look, Steven, thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl Watley, for reminding us of atpgeo.com/donate. We have indeed reached the target there, even though it's less than the target that's on the screen. But because we're doing it, Silicon Curtain and ATP Geopolitics with another one called Toonie Tuesday, and they've raised enough there that combined, we've hit the target for the 80th Air Assault Brigade. So we'll be switching over tonight from, you can still give money to the Jiggers Paw campaign from atpgeo.com/donate. And then we're going to switch over to the Christmas Car for Ukraine campaign that I'll talk about with you in a forthcoming video. But yeah, thank you, Cheryl, for always reminding us of that. And thank you to all the people who super chatted, really generous. Papa Dutch, if I stimulated in any way, always Papa Dutch, it's mutual. If I've confused you, this is still good because you're wondering about it. Always great to have you on board, Papa. And thank you indeed to him, Mitch Mazarol, and Kevin Forst. Who else do we have? Zeb Carter and Mark Biscu, as ever, and Noel Grace. So thank you to all of you guys. Take care to the live to you in the live chat, and I'll be back with more videos. I don't know whether I'm going to produce anything tonight. I do have a big military aid video I'll probably do a live stream for tomorrow. But Steven, you take care, mate. Stay on the line, and we're talking the green room. But I guess all I have to say is Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava.